Hi everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. Now in this video, we're going to talk about um, lower neck and lower back issues that essentially make up 99% of surgeries when it comes to the spine. Now, at Truly Holistic, we provide a spinal alignment posture correction session or service, and that's all done distantly. So, which is amazing, right? No physical adjustment needed, all energetically done. And this is something I've done for years and years and years, and for clients all around the world, distantly, gaining great results. And we're going to showcase those results at the end in regards to some testimonials. And again, I've just picked out the best three, but I do have a number of other testimonials in regards to this. And over that period of time, it's been a learning curve for me. If nobody knows my background, I had a grandparents. My grandmother, my nana, she used to use intuition to find out where there was a misalignment in someone's neck or back. And she used to use this dowsing V rod and go down someone's spine, which was made of whalebone, amazingly enough. And to pinpoint, I would pinpoint on that person's spine when they're out of alignment. And then my grandfather would do a, osteochiropractic adjustment, and then she'd check it and say, yep, it's all back in. They'd feel a lot better and then walk out the door. So I was brought up in that. That was normal to me. And, you know, later, a little in my teenage years or later teenage years, in my early 20s, I was having a lot of neck pain, neck problems that were also associated to misalignment in my neck that were causing migraines as well. And I had lower back problems. I used to get sciatica and all these sorts of things. And then I became also a nurse, an orthopedic nurse. I worked in orthopedics in a hospital setting for 12, 13 years. So, working with people that were having elective surgeries for the very surgeries we're talking about here in this video, as well as, hip, knee replacements, all sorts of things that were addressed to the spine and skeletal system. So a lot of history in regards to that and understanding in the medical orthopedic world. And then, of course, one of the big things in becoming an energy healer, one of the first things I learnt was to, intuitively find out where there was a misalignment in someone's spinal skeletal system, but also go a little bit further than my grandparents were able to go, not just intuitively find, where there was a misalignment or subluxation in the spine, but also using energy to remedy it and realign it. Okay. And for a lot of people still in the spiritual consciousness communities, the healers themselves, they work on all sorts of health problems through energy, but they still depend or rely on someone coming in and physically adjusting them to correct it, which I find really interesting in itself, because really, when it comes to the body, including the bone structure, it's all energy. Okay. But I learned a lot through the years. And we obviously focused originally on alignment, but we realized that the precursor to alignment is posture. And there's an old saying in regards to posture, it's how we hold ourselves. And that's going to really come to the core of what we're going to talk about in this video, because if our self at our core, at our origin, is frequencies, is energy, is consciousness, it's how we utilize our consciousness, how we use our energy. Are we leaking out energy into all different things that then don't support us? Or are we holding our energy, which I guess we can associate to that expression, to hold space, which means to drop into our natural state in our heart and hold that space, which is to expand the field. And of course, that energy field then has a precursor to how the body functions, and also how that posture of the body is expressed, right? And of course, that's going to have a positive effect on the the symmetry of the body, because the body's symmetrical in a 3D fashion, and that's what we then utilize in my spinal alignment posture correction service, an XYZ model of posture assessment, how we go about correcting that as well. So there's a lot of chiropractors that are very integrative, and they focus a lot on posture and posture assessment. But here at Truly Holistic, we take it a step further, because I'm an energy healer, and we deal with consciousness, and we see that energy and consciousness is the precursor to posture, and then posture is the precursor to alignment, right? So 99% of surgeries are due to lower neck issues and lower back issues, because there's a big bundle of nerves in the lower neck, and there's a big bundle of nerves in the lower back. And of course, a big bundle of nerves in the lower neck, mid to lower neck, then the pathway of those run down the traps to the shoulder joints, and then run down the arms into the hands, right? So people that have shoulder problems, people that lose grip strength, right? Or just lose function of the hands, the carpal tunnel. All of this is connected to that. Lower back problems, right? Sciatica, as I gave you the example before, right? Sciatic nerve and a bundle of other nerves in that lower back, they migrate right across the pelvis and through the hip and down the leg and down into the foot, right? So, you can understand why there are so many surgeries based on that, because, the nerves cause issues elsewhere in other physiology, because of where the bundle of nerves, the root of that nerve originates from in the lower neck and the lower spine or the lower back. Now, what I can say for sure, right, as I say, posture is the precursor of alignment. And for those nerves to be compressed, right, and it doesn't take much. It could be just touching of a nerve, an irritation of a nerve that's creating that altered sensation that runs down the leg into the foot, or runs down the arm into the hand, right, is caused by a misalignment, right? A slipped disc, a prolapsed disc, a herniated disc, vertebrae being out of alignment, and that pushing against the nerve, right? The space that is there for the nerve is this stenosis, which means a narrowing of space, right, of that nerve, and it gets compressed, right? Now, usually, unless, the only other thing is an injury, right? Someone having a car accident or a sports injury. But other than that, why there is things out of alignment is generally down to one's posture. And we talk about, consciousness work a lot. And this aspect that, for me, consciousness is self-awareness. And when we're talking about posture, we need to be self-aware of our movement and how we stand in our posture, right, to limit the possibility of these misalignments happening, which eventually leads to these problems, right? Back pain, neck pain, compression to nerves that then eventually lead to 99% of spinal surgeries. So can we say that those issues are in place because there's a lack of self-awareness, which means a lack of consciousness? Yes. Right? Because when I do sessions for spinal alignment posture correction, I get the client to send me 3 photos of their posture, right? As I said, we do an X, Y, Z axis posture assessment. And that one of the photos is from the front, one's from the side, and one's from the back. And this is, for most of those clients, the first time they're actually looking at their posture, right? They might have had back pain for a long time, right? And they've tried a number of areas and they come to me. Maybe this is a new thing to them, that they're having back pain. I've had clients that have gone into in the medical route, right? And they've had MRI scans, they've had CT scans, right? They've had X-rays, and they don't like the treatment options being given to them, or they're being sent out the door to go and get physio and just given painkillers. They come to me, right? Now, so right, so when they see those photos, they're shocked. They're like, "Wow, I didn't realize my left shoulder's higher than my right shoulder. That there's a translation of my pelvis and hip to one side, which means then when their arms are down their side, there's a big gap on one side and not so much on the other side. That my neck's on a tilt, my head's on a tilt shot. Sorry, that my shoulders are so rounded forward and my head is so protruded forward, which we call forward head posture. This is the first time that they're realizing that. And that could have been happening for years, for decades. And as I say, that's what leads to these issues. So to be more consciously aware, right? Self-aware of how we move and mobilize, like every day, as I'm walking down the street, for example, to go and get my coffee at the cafe, I'm looking at where my toes are pointing in regards to how I walk, right? That it's amazing how many people with their feet, they don't not even realize that one foot's pointing out that way, one's straight ahead, and that's how they walk, and that's not natural. That's not symmetrical, is it? Because that's creating a rotation with the knee, and it's causing a rotation with the hip that then puts pressure on their lower back, right? So the most common postural deficit, because this video, after all, isn't it the cause of 99% of spinal injuries? And we've already emphasized this aspect of posture, but the most common postural deficit is forward head posture, right? And that leads to the shoulders being rounded, right? And people that get shoulder problems, right? They believe they get shoulder pain and problems, and then because of that, they lose the range of movement of the shoulder joint. No, that's not what's happening. They lose the range of movement in their shoulder joint based on bad posture for a long period of time, including especially forward head posture, and then they get problems and they get pain, right? Because, for example, if I'm standing anatomically correct, right, that my shoulders aren't round forward, they're back, right? My chest is out, right? And when I explain this posture, right, which is anatomically correct, that my shoulders are back, my chest is out, right, that my ears are in line with my shoulders, not over the clavicle, I'm talking about a posture expression that is someone that's confident, right? Because what do we talk about? Things. Oh, he looks confident, right? Because he's got his chest forward, shoulders back, head forward, right? Because when you generally walk, what are people don't look at you eye to eye. The heads are down, they're looking down, and that means the shoulders are rounding forward. Everything's coming forward. And what's that posture expression? A lack of confidence, right? Low self-esteem, right? All of these sorts of things, which emphasizes the word lack. And we talk a lot in consciousness work about that lacks a mentality. And when we allow the mind and its thoughts and mentality to guide our choices, right, where we place our attention, how we use our intention, we tend to embody the lack aspect, right? Lack of self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, lack of this and that. And that lack will be shown through your posture, through your interface, which is what my soul consciousness calls the body. Right? Because it's an interface to express the very consciousness or lack of through this medium we call a body. Right? So that really emphasizes what the significance of posture, right? So forward head posture, most common posture there is. Now, of course, it's more prevalent these days because we all carry one of these, right? Yes, we could say it's due to more people working at a desk, right? Desk jobs and working on computers. Yes, manual laboring is generally in front of ourselves, right? It's bringing us forward. But, people are walking around looking at their phone, right? So they're down like that, right? Okay. So what goes on is the shoulders round forward. Now, I'm just going to show a demonstration here, and it's going to be excessive, just to prove the point. Talking about our range of movement of shoulders, right? So if I anatomically correct, right, keep the shoulders back, my head's over my spine, right? Look at that. I can get it straight up. But if I bring this forward and I roll my shoulders forward, let's see how far I can get it up. Look at that. Immediately, just by pushing my head forward, and most people's natural state is always to be in their head being forward and shoulders being rounded. We are massively losing our range of movement of our shoulder, and that's just the shoulder joint. Okay. And if you're not accessing and using that range of movement of the shoulder, it's connected to that expression that if we don't use it, we lose it. And then it gets kind of calcified, right? That brings in arthritis and all these sorts of things that come into play with that. Okay. Now, as I said, right, in the mid to lower part of your neck, there's a big bundle of nerves there. So if the most common postural deficit is forward head posture and rounded shoulders, it's putting a lot of pressure in that area where there's a whole huge bundle of nerves, right? And actually, for a lot of people, it leads to a dowager's hump. That's what it's called, which is the body, because it's having to take the strain of excessive weight of the skull and the head with it being so far forward, it creates extra tissue here. Okay. And what happens there is a very important muscle called the trapezius muscle, a muscle that connects into the base of the skull, right? And it comes down the neck and it wings over towards the deltoids, which are over the shoulder joint. And it goes about halfway down the back, but just below your shoulder blades, your scapulars. This is a very big muscle and a very important muscle, because when we have forward head posture and rounded shoulders coming forward, that muscle is taking a lot of strain, and it never gives up. It never has a break as long as that head's forward, right? Because people are unaware of that, right? They have a lack of self-awareness, right, of their posture, right? That muscle gets bound up and tight all the time, 24/7. And when it's bound up and tight, the body readjusts because, in our day-to-day life, we're picking up extra workload, right? We're picking up things, right, with more weight. And we're doing chores around the house, and we're doing chores out in the property. And so the body's like, okay, this muscle group up here, which is really your neck and your upper back, it's out of commission. So what happens is your lower back has to work harder. And what does that lead to? Lower back problems. A majority of lower back problems, right, as it's part of 99% of surgeries when it comes to the spine, eventually, is not actually even originating from what's happening with the lower back. It's what's happening with what you're doing with the head, neck, and upper back and the shoulders, right? A lot of people won't tell you that, right? If you go to the doctors, they're going to just, where's your pain? We're going to focus on that focal area. We're going to do x-rays, MRIs, and so on, right? That's just how the medical system is. It's a very compartmentalized system. And through a compartmentalized system, which breaks the whole into parts. It never understands the holistic aspect of what's going on, especially in regards to the spine, right? The spine works in a oneness, okay? So what we see then, that then it causes those subluxations, misalignments in the mid to lower part of the neck, right? And with the head going like that, it's creating a stenosis. It's creating less room for those bundle of nerves, right? And often what happens with the shoulder blades and the scapular blades, they're protruding out too, which then affects nerves in that area as well, okay? It tightens everything around the rib cage as well, right? You just lose so much range of movement in that area, okay? So, a big job that we do at Truly Holistic is to free up that trapezius muscle, to make that person aware of their posture, right? Of course, we realign everything, right? We work on the posture, the precursor to that misalignment, because if we don't do that, it's just going to come back out of alignment again, right? But we also go that step further that no one else goes to, which is the realization, right? Posture is how we hold ourselves and what we ultimately are at our core. What we are is a consciousness, an energy. And why we're here, to create reality with our energy. So in every moment, through where we place our attention, our focus, and how we use our intention, we are investing our energy into creating that experience of reality. Okay. And if, put this image up here, and if, like on the left side, right, the bucket that's got all those holes in it, right, we are placing our energy in a place that we don't hold that energy or gain that energy back, and it's going into creation that does not serve us, then it will be showcased in your posture. There's no doubt about that. And it will have then a detrimental effect to alignment, which then will result in problems, pain, discomfort, spinal compression. We'll get to that in a minute, because compression is the effect of gravity. Okay, and gravity's just not a force. We'll talk about that. In fact, this duality bucket, right, with all the holes, you will experience your body, and that experience will be that everything becomes heavy, right? Like stress and overwhelm, right? What's the common expression of that? I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders, pressure on my chest, lethargy through the body. That's heaviness. Do you know what the Latin word for gravity means? Heaviness. Okay. Now, the one to the right, neutrality, right? When we don't have holes in the bucket, which means we become self-aware of how we apply our energy and where it's going, right? Which means we hold our energy better, right? Posture, how we hold ourselves. It will be reflected in your posture, right? A posture that is anatomically correct and supports the alignment of your spine and skeletal system. Okay. Now, what you experience then through that body is a lightness, which we call levity. Levity is the opposing force of gravity. And do you know what the Latin word for levity is? Light, which is another word we use to reference consciousness. Your consciousness, your energy. Full circle, right? So all the consciousness work we do here is very much in play when we look at the spine and the skeletal system. Okay. Let's have a look. I'm just checking the notes. Right, we've got some more visual representation we're gonna provide up here. So at Truly Holistic, we have a system called the Intuitively Aligned System. This is a system I developed. This is the very chart, dowsing charts I use when we do a spinal alignment posture correction session. Now, I created that system, yes, for me to help people and treat people all around the world. And we're going to showcase some testimonials in a minute, but also as a system that you can purchase and learn yourself and utilize that for yourself, for your loved ones, your family, if you're a practitioner, to your community. Okay. And for me, as I said, I had really bad spine problems. And when I now reflect on my spinal problems, especially in association, because it led to migraines. And migraines, the first symptoms I started to get was I just felt weak. I just felt weak, didn't have energy. And then when I started to get blurry eyes, right, my vision would be affected. I knew from that point that what was next was pain, severe pain in the head. And I knew from that point, it didn't matter what I did or what, painkillers I took, it wasn't going to reverse it. And I was going to be out lying in bed for the day, the curtains shut, and most likely it was going to take days and days and days for me to fully recuperate. Okay. So it was a big fear aspect to it because I just knew I had no control over it. Now, and that doesn't have to be migraines. That can be just neck pain, sciatica, back pain, recurring issues with that. Now, what about if you had that ability to correct that in the palm of your hand? That's why I created the system, to remove the fear, right? And like all the other self-empowered healing systems I create, because I create others too, as well as this intuitively aligned, is it's promoting self-empowerment, right? It's showcasing your abilities of how you create reality, because we create reality. So it's not a big step to then have a system that guides and supports that creation ability, because you're going to become more self-aware of it, which is using attention and intention. And it's all incorporated in the system. So you get dowsing charts, but you get an instruction manual as well, which teaches you how to use the system, but also to use, as you can see in that photo, the X, Y, Z axis posture assessment to assess posture, correct posture, but also correct alignment. And with a number of other things too. You get a little subtle energy device we call a wand, which is essentially providing acupuncture, but without the needle. You also get a little tool and a little chart where you can work on trigger and pressure points, foot and hand reflexology as well, and a number of things that come with the system. It's an amazing system. Make sure to go and check it out. It's in my product store, trulyholistic.net/products/ called the Intuitively Aligned System. Currently on special at the moment. So go and check it out. Now, here, let's show you this, right? We're talking about the bundles of nerves, right? That encapsulate the 99% of surgeries, right, that have been done on the spine. Always involves the lower neck, the lower back. You can see that, right? The bundles of nerves, right? Those the nerves in the lower neck that they migrate, right? The pathway runs down the traps, the trapezius, into the shoulder and down the arm, right? So a lot of people that have problems in their arm, whether it's with the elbow, they're having pain in their shoulder, they're having carpal tunnel syndrome kind of symptoms, they're getting less grip strength. Most of the time, it's due to what's going on in your neck. And it's due to your forward head posture, common postural deficits that no one is aware of. Why? Because as the human, we get taught to use mind, thought, mentality to discern our life, right? How we perceive, how should we react to what we're perceiving. And what the mind does, it removes your self-awareness. It makes you become more aware of what's going out here, out in the world, and less about what you're doing with your own energy, which then is showcased through your posture and how it sits, right? It's how we hold ourselves, posture. Okay. So, as I said, when you book an appointment for spinal alignment posture correction service, we get you to take a photo from the front, from the side, and from the back. And that gives us a 3D XYZ axis assessment, right? Where I can get an idea of where your posture is, right? So, um, from the front and from the back, I'm looking at, the shoulders parallel. Is there one shoulder higher than the other? Is there one shoulder or shoulder blade that's rotating around while one is being pushed back, right? So there's a torsioning going on because the body's symmetrical. The left side should look like the right side, right? Not only left and right, but also anterior and posterior, right? Front and back. That's where we look at that middle photo there from the side, right? We're looking at is the ears over the shoulders, or is the ears now more over the clavicle, which means the head's going forward. We're looking at the shoulders rounding forward. Sometimes that's only one shoulder that's rounding forward while the other one's pushed back, which then shows that one shoulder, one scapula is rotating around, right? So there's torsioning going on with the spine. We're also looking at, is the hips on the side coming far forward and putting a lot of strain then on the knee. From the front and back photo, we're looking at, is there a translation with the hip or pelvis where it's being moved to one side? So there'll be more of a gap between the hip and the inside part of the arm on one side compared to the other. So there's so much that we can detect. And again, you'll learn in that system if you are wanting to be empowered about that. But also that's what I look for in regards to the photos that are presented to me. We're also looking for curvature problems, scoliosis, which is a lateral curvature, which generally, the origin of that lateral curvature is usually in the mid-back, the thoracic spine, but it'll be obvious in the upper back and the lower back that there is a scoliosis, because you'll see a translation of the pelvis and the hip to one side, and you'll see one of the shoulders higher than the other. I remember this fondly. There was a session I did with a lady that was in the US, and she goes, I've got a really bad scoliosis. And she came up to the camera and showed me, and you could see that one shoulder was way higher than the other. It wasn't parallel. She goes, can you do anything with that? And I go, okay, let's do it. Let's get into it. And it didn't even take a full session because we were doing other things as well in that session. I'm pretty sure it was about 25 minutes later, 30 max. We did all this work, and then she couldn't believe it because she saw herself in the camera, and her shoulders were parallel within 25 to 30 minutes of work. Her in the USA, me in New Zealand. No physical adjustment, nothing physical, all energy. Right? People would say it's a miracle, but it's a daily occurrence here at Truly Holistic. Right? Miracles are the norm. Okay. It's just that the mind and thought mentality, which we are so taught and conditioned, controlled to utilize, it doesn't want to focus on miracles. It wants to focus on the doom and gloom that the media showcases to us. The probabilities, not the infinite possibilities that life is really about. Okay. Where lordosis is more to do with the lumbar, where where everything's coming forward, right, and it just creates an instability there. And then so we've got lordosis, scoliosis, and kyphosis, involving the upper part of the back, where there's an excessive hump going on, where there'll be really severe forehead posture and all sorts of things, and the scapular blades and between the shoulder blades is locked up, and that trapezius muscle's tight, and there'll be lack of room of those nerves, and they get compressed and all these sorts of things with that issue as well. Here's another one that talks about the XYZ axis aspect. So X is, lateral from the front, so that way or that way. Z-axis is more anterior posterior, so it's forward, back, right, as you can see there. And then the y-axis is the length of the body, right? So if you're somebody that's got you're a massage therapist or you're a practitioner and you've got a table, massage table or bed, you get them to lie down and you look at their leg length, right? Is it the same, or is one leg shorter or longer than the other? And you can get an assessment of that in regards to what's going on with the SI, the sacroiliac joint, and the pelvis, and you can then remedy that accordingly. So this is where all that assessment roots from. And I'll bring this one up too, was talking about, gravity and levity, right? Gravity meaning heaviness, light. Levity meaning light. And this is very much connected to, as the human, we're discerned either out of mind, thought, mentality, or out of heart, feel, knowing, right? We're kind of dual discerned, and that's where generally the inner conflict comes from as the human. What do I go by? Do I go by the thoughts that are coming in, or do I go by what I'm intuitively feeling? And so feel is the domain of the heart, and the heart is what facilitates your soul, which is often referenced as your light, right? So that is the quantum on this diagram, right? Which is giver of light and consciousness through you, right? Which then results in your auric field expanding out. And when your field expands out, it means you're holding your light really well, which means it will showcase in anatomically correct posture, right? That then supports the body, supports the alignment of the body. Now, the void here, this is what the mind represents, because the mind doesn't facilitate your soul or your light. It doesn't facilitate your natural state that supports you, even though as the human, we are taught and conditioned to use that as our primary form of discernment, right? That is gravity, right? That's that heaviness, okay? And obviously in this diagram, it makes it look like a black hole. Why? Because a black hole has a strong gravitational force. And what is it? It sucks the light away. And what do we see when somebody's mind, thought, mentality? Their field collapses in, right? You're losing your ability to hold your light, hold your energy. And then that will be showcased in your posture as deficits, which then cause alignment issues. It's all connected to it, right? Here's talking about that field, right? As it says here, levity from the heart, right? Light, your soul consciousness. When you access the heart, you expand your auric field. Remember, your field, which is never supposed to be contained in the body, it goes beyond, outside of the body. That is you, right? Because generally, when we're a mind, thought, mentality, we are taught to emphasize and focus on our physicality, which often leads to our greatest fear, which is when we lose our physicality, we know as death, because what's next for us? When really we're focusing on something that is really not us. We utilize the body for an experience here, but ultimately when we leave here, the body doesn't come with us. So it's not infinitely and authentically what we are. The field, ourselves as a soul consciousness, that's what we are, infinitely and authentically. So we want that field nice and expansive. But of course, when we are more in mind, thought, mentality, right? Now it's gravity. And what happens with that? That field collapses in. And we may not see this field because our eyes only see 0.00035% of the electromagnetic spectrum of light, right? So we see not even close to 1% of reality with our eyes. But this is the role of the body. We may not see the field, but we experience the field through what we feel through the body, because the body is a form of discernment, right? An example of a severely immediate collapsed field is a panic attack, right? Well, hyperventilating and panicking. Why? Because if we could see that field, it would look like 4 walls of a room caving in on you. No wonder you're panicking. You're getting that physiological response through the body as though it can see what's going on. right? This is all connected to all this posture and alignment issues. This is where we go to this length at Truly Holistic to help remedy and correct that for you. Let's go to the testimonials to finish, right? So let's go to this one first, and let's read it out. So initially, I was diagnosed with a herniation in my lower back via MRI. I was having pain in my lower back recently, which is why I came to you for sessions. I had another MRI of my lower back a little over a week ago. There was no signs of a herniation in my lower back. Right? So they had an MRI scan that confirmed herniation. They had sessions with me. Then they had another MRI post that, which then showed no sign of herniation. So that is proof, visual proof, that what we provided at Truly Holistic corrected their herniations, right? So as she goes, herniations don't disappear like that without surgery. She goes, I never had surgery. I've been in shock questioning what happened. I just recently put 2 and 2 together. You were the only one who did energy work on my back. The surgery was you, what Truly Holistic provide. Right? What if, and this is done, not with somebody next to me or me physically adjusting them. They were in the United States, me in New Zealand. And that's what we were able to create and achieve. Okay. I've been doing this for years. Right. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Next one. Now, this client was in Japan. Okay. Let's read it. I have zero pain today. It's amazing. Every day for 3 months now, I had felt it, and now I don't feel it. It feels like energy is flowing, and now there is no tightness and nerve pain. Thank you so much. I'm now more amazed at what you do. Because the thing is, I put a lot of this stuff out there, and because of the way that we're taught to focus on probability for mind, thought, mentality, not to look at miracles, right? That people, that can't be right. But that person making that decision to do that, right? You're limiting your options and your ability to heal issues from that point onwards. You're doing that. You're putting the odds against yourself by doing that, right? So as I added to this testimony, right, the background behind it, the client had been clinically diagnosed with a herniated disc. Again, clinically diagnosed with a herniated disc. It wasn't just F or maybe, clinically diagnosed. And told they couldn't do anything for it. They didn't have any options for them, with the expectation that it would resolve over time. That was my experience as an orthopedic nurse on a hospital setting. Right, we're not going to touch it. I'm not going to do the orthopedic surgeon saying, no, we're not going to do surgery. They're just going to have to try and get some form of mobility to function out there. We'll give them the scripts of painkillers and medication so they can live on that to just get by. I saw that time and time again. Okay. Because their understanding was, okay, when they get movement, that movement is going to enable that disc to correct itself. But do you know what I've experienced? Is that when that disc is herniated, right, and it's pushing against the nerve, all the tissue around that area just tightens up. And it's tight because the disc's out and it's pushing on the nerve. What's going to correct that is to allow space for that nerve to not be compressed. That's what's going to fix it. And that's what we do it here at Truly Holistic. Okay. We have people coming into the hospital on our ward time and time again and again and again and again. And they got lost up in the system because they were dependent by that point on opioid medications. And then all of a sudden, the next problem was we couldn't get them off that. Well, I resolved the herniated disc in 1 day, one session, 1 day. Is this going to be for everyone? This is going to happen? No, but it can happen. As I say, what is truly holistic focus on? Infinite possibilities. If your focus is on probability, right, you're putting all your odds against you. You're the one that's stopping your body healing. Okay. Right? What wonderful testimonials there. I've got one more. But what I want to say, I'm going to use another example. I had a gentleman in India, okay, talking about all multicultural, right? And this is a guy that had an MRI scan, right? And he came to me, and this scan was still already at that point about 2 years old, but he was still obviously having back pain and problems. So we worked on it, and he could feel the differences, like he could feel different by the end of the session. But next time this next session came along, it was like just an autopilot mode. Just it was like deja vu. It was like Groundhog Day. It'd come and present the same, and it'd go, yeah, this is what the scan says. Now, do you know why we made progress at the end of the session, but the next time he came around, it was back to square one again? Do you know why? Not because the healings didn't work, but because of how he was applying his own energy, and he was focusing on the probability, which is a loop, a remanifestating loop, where you just end up back in the same spot again. And that's bound and due to your own process of how you apply your energy. You create reality. And the longer, as long as he embodied that scan, right, which was 2 years old, he was going to be imprisoned to what that scan said for the rest of his life, unless he lets that go. Okay? I really have to emphasize that. Here's the last one. We're powerful creators. Here we go. Here's the next one. I literally threw my walking stick away after one session. And I had my seat again, scans. I had my CT scans on the table during our session. I told him nothing. This is what he's saying, like in regards to the first 5-10 minutes of session. I say, hey, what do you want to work on? Right? And for somebody, they'll go, hey, I've got lower back pain, sciatic pain, but they also most of the time disclose, okay, I've seen an orthopedic surgeon. We had an MRI. This is what the MRI showed me. They might even send me the results or all this stuff so I can have a look at it. And but in this case, he told me nothing. He just said, yeah, I've got an issue with my back. He didn't tell me that he had had a scan and what it showed. And he was blown away in the session because everything I found through my dowsing, my intuition to find out what we need to work on, aligned exactly to the results of what the scan showed. And he didn't disclose that to me. I told him nothing, and he rattled off everything that was on the CT scan. Bang on. I was bang on. And he goes, love working with you. And we've done further work with different things, but it made a huge difference, and it's been that way ever since. Right? Amazing. Again, if you want to book an appointment for yourself or a loved one for spinal alignment posture correction service or session, go to my appointment page at trulyholistic.net/appointments/. Now, this system that I use for these results for people all around the world for many years, called the Intuitively Aligned System. If you want that for yourself and to learn that, because also you get a free 45-minute session with me where we go through the session together. Any issues or any questions you want to ask to get more insight about, we answer those and we go through the system. Make sure it works for you. And you can always get in touch with me and ask me questions if you get stuck on anything. I'm there to support you. It's a wonderful system for so many things you can provide to remove inflammation, remove pain, work on calcification problems and joint problems, realign any bone of the skeletal system, any part of the spine, release compressed nerves, all sorts. Incredible system. If you want to get that system, go to my product store at trulyholistic.net/products/look at the intuitively aligned system. Please like this video, consider subscribing to the channel if you'd love this content and more of it. Push the notification bell to be notified when the next video drops. Till next time, catch you later.